Welcome back, all my 40K fanatics out there. I'm DJ here with Tim's Nation. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been working on the Grey Knights, trying to, at the end of 9th edition, maybe go to a local RTT, hang out with some friends, and get one last tournament in as a farewell to 9th edition. We'll see how that plays out, but I thought I would take the Grey Knights, them being an army that I've played for a very long time and hold a special place in my heart, as you'll see with some of the models that I'm showcasing in this video. With that being said, there has been a lot of information I picked up, tried to do a lot of different things, and seen what worked and what didn't work. And heavily, if you've seen some of the battle reports, a lot of things that didn't work, and my feelings on why they may not have worked. Now, mind you, Grey Knights is actually I wouldn't say it's an intense book, a deep book. There's a lot of very intricate things that work together very well, but some of them come at a great cost. The way that the abilities are stacked on characters, psychic powers, which is one big part of it, or stratagems, relics, and wisdoms, all those things. And they can get very expensive as things start to build up. Some of them are one use only. That was causing some issues. So there's a lot of intricate detail with this, and it's not an army that you can just pick up, throw on the table, and say, poof, I'm going to be good with this army. I'm definitely super rusty with them, and I definitely see, as I'm playing the game, opportunities that I could have with units to do more. With that being said, there were definitely some glaring weaknesses that I saw in a lot of different units. And I want to talk to you about that a little bit today with some of those units that I tried out, as well as what I'm bringing tonight in the conclusion of the Grey Knights versus Votann against Lane later tonight. Tonight, we're doing a farewell to 9th edition to our armies as well. If Lane defeats me, not only will I not take the Grey Knights to an RTT and figure something else out for a different army, but it will put them on the shelf for the duration of 9th edition. Until 10th edition hits and we have new rules, the Grey Knights will not appear again on the channel, so this is a retirement match of sakes for that army. If I win, then I'm going to ask Lane that his next battle report on the table has to be with Custodes, because I want to see those. I've yet to see his painted Custodes yet, and I've actually never played a game against him with his Custodes, so I'd like to see that. So that's going to be the stipulation tonight. Grey Knights win, Custodes next video. Grey Knights lose, they go on the shelf for the duration and the end of 9th edition. Guys, thank you for joining me. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do. Turn on the bell for notifications. Get notified for Lane's video talking about his Votann he's playing tonight, as well as the battle report and post-game wrap-up. So with this video, we'll start off with what didn't work with a lot of these units. So the last video I ran as 20 side cannons. I said, you know what? We're going to buff a librarian with empiric amplification. Make sure he's going to cast that. He's going to land. He's going to cast that, and whatever that target is, I'm going to destroy it. I'm going to kill it. I'm going to score 5 points on teleport strike. We're going to move on to the next turn. I thought I'm going to come into this corner over here and hide out a little bit and be able to mitigate the damage that's done and burn a bunch of stuff off the table. So there's a few things. One, I'm still in power armor. It's a 3-up save. We fail 3-up saves. And you always fail a 3-up save when you're taking a hit from a 2-damage weapon. And I know there's so many Marine players out there that can feel me on that one. You know, you'll make you get one single wound shot and you make those 3-ups. Okay, no big deal. But the 1-2 damage shot that comes through, that's the one that's going to be that you fail. That's the one that you get a 2-up save because you get cover and you roll the 1. Still, nonetheless, the Marines are a little squishy. Not a lot of defensive capabilities there, not a lot to protect me. I can't really go into Tide of Shadows because of Lane's ability to ignore cover with his bikes. So there wasn't a lot for me to do defensively to keep him alive, except for hide. Now, when I hide with them, I over-dedicated because of Teleport Strike. Teleport Strike, as a lot of people have told me, and I've had comments in there, and I do agree with you guys. So there's many people have said in the comment section that it's difficult doing Teleport Strike without the Dread Knights, and I completely agree. The amount of firepower that the Dread Knights can put down on a hit is a lot easier to kind of control how the damage is being dished out. If you need to hit something bigger that the Dread Knights can do maybe like 6 to 8 wounds on it, you may need to soften it up first, and then the Dread Knight finishes off. But the Dread Knight is more reliable damage all around the board, especially with like Sword Bearers, which is the Brotherhood I'm taking for today. There is a lot more that you can do with them. The Purge are very, very... It's shaky. It's shaky with how their damage is put out. So number one, let's start off with just the basis of it. You have 4 side cannons, so you have 12 shots. Those 12 shots are hitting on a 4-up. And I know what people are going to say, well, there's a stratagem, and what about this? Well, I'm assuming these guys deep strike in, and I do not have the command points to spend on that, because there's a lot of stuff to spend the command points on in Grey Knights. So let's say I don't have the command points to spend to go +1 to hit. Drago isn't nearby. We got no rerolls. That is a very likely situation. And that's a likely situation moving forward deeper into the game. Excuse me, if the Purge are still on the table. You're still hitting on 4s. It's a 50% odds. So of those 12 shots, if we're just talking numbers, only 6 of them hit. So from that point, we're a strength 7, maybe strength 8 if you buff with psychic onslaught for getting you +1 strength and +1 AP. I mean, that's good and that helps, but you're still you're going from a 7 to an 8. You're wounding vehicles on 3s. You're wounding most stuff still on 3s. And so maybe the power armor guys, you're not as much, but a lot of the other stuff is T5 or up, and you're hitting because you have higher damage weapons, and you're not really doing that much. Sure, you can paste a Marine for days, but then you don't need the empiric amplification and the +1 damage. That's not what you're going after with the technique that I was trying to implore. So when the first squad hit, the dice went hot, and they just absolutely annihilated the Sagittar. And then I could not finish off the Berserks with the other squads. And I was a strike squad with 2 side cannons plus another Purge squad. Those ones swung for the fences, and I rolled for the dice, and I go, oh, okay, you take 1 wound. And that's what I'm talking about, is that with that 4s to hit, 3s to wound, and in the Votann situation, no rerolls to wound. And then the AP. The AP is only AP1. But then if you buff it, you're looking at an AP2. Well, that AP1 is still just taking a 3-up to a 4-up, and it's not giving quite enough oomph. And again, when I say take that, make it a AP2, you're spending so much to get the Purge going to to be viable. You go, oh, okay, well, you can pay a command point to go +1 to hit because you deep strike. Okay, there's a CP. Then you're spending a command point for Psychic Onslaught. Now you're spending a command point for Psychic Channeling so that you guarantee Empiric Amp goes off. Maybe I'm just popping the gem that I had. But there's so many different other funnels that are going into this that you're spending so many command points on this unit to maybe kill one thing. Maybe kill that one thing and, yes, score those 5 points. And later into the game, when you need those command points for interrupting or for passing a morale or for re-rolling a purifying ritual to score points to win the game, you don't have those command points there because you're spending them so early to finish targets off with the side cannons from the purgation squads. I would think that it would be in good ideas, like with how I did it. The first Purge squad, maybe you don't spend as much onto them and let them just fire freely and see what they do. And then the next one, if you need to, if the first one fails miserably, the next one you can overcharge and make it happen. But it still puts us in a really awkward situation where you don't know, like if the first squad does fair, the second squad does horrible, now you're stuck. You lost 5 points onto them. So that's like my take with the Purge, is that they're too soft and squishy, and they're too swingy. A Dread Knight in all of these same exact categories, if you spend the same command points, do the same psychic powers and everything else, the Dread Knight is landing with a 2-up save base. The Dread Knight is landing with a 4-up invuln so you can cast Sanctuary somewhere else. The Dread Knight is landing at already boosted strength and AP on its guns. I'm assuming side cannon silencer because that's how I like them. I know the Incinerator, some people enjoy that as well. I could see it. I totally can understand why. I really just like that Gatling silencer. I love picking up 12 dice for that thing, especially when you get all the buffs up onto the, whether Empiric Amp or Psychic Channeling. Psychic Onslaught, I mean. Sorry. So right, all that right off rip just takes that Dread Knight and it makes it so much better for everything at the same time. You spend that same command point on him because he deep struck in, and now you're looking at a 2s to hit instead of 3s to hit. You have a Tech Marine that can give him +1 to hit and gate across the field. There's a lot that more that you can do off the Dread Knight, and it's hard to ignore it. On top of the fact that with that Dread Knight, with Abhor the Witch, with secondaries, and with scoring, the Dread Knight becomes a better target. Abhor the Witch is in the same column as Assassinate and Bring It Down. And when you look at the characters, we have some good characters, but we don't have a volume bulk of damage dealing end of the world characters that we can fully build an army around. You have Drago, Dread Knight, Librarian, etc., etc., etc. But they're good, they're tools, they're utilities, but at some point they're going to stop. And if you do go into heavy just characters, your opponent may pick Assassinate just because of the fact that it might be easier. Also, those characters are giving them 3 points for Abhor the Witch, so you still want to kind of tweak in how you go there. Bring It Down, on the other hand, is one that's kind of really good to tech into with this, because now they're judging it on, when you start looking at Abhor the Witch points, they may start judging that and looking at some of the other vehicles, if you run rhinos, etc., and decide if that might be the better route to score. Not to mention, more vehicles means less infantry. Less infantry means less wounds for no prisoners, which was a glaring weakness right off rip, especially going into Votann. But I was fine with it, because if I couldn't get by Votann, then I can't get by Tau. Then I can't get by Space Wolves. Any army that can shoot is going to outscore me on secondaries every single game. The Abhor the Witch still scores high. Now I have 140 wound count in my army and an apothecary. Okay, you take no prisoners. Now you at least, if you table me, you get 14 points. If you don't, you're still looking at a solid 12. That's really, really, really rough. And if I bring anybody back, there might be your 15. And with the previous list, I was well over both columns. Abhor the Witch was scored halfway through the game, and no prisoners was nothing. Absolutely nothing at all. So the Purge, honestly, I got to give them a D as far as a grade for performance. They are our heavy weapon squad, but with the low AP, low strength of their guns, the fact that the guns are heavy, the fact that they're in Space Marine armor, regular power armor, and the fact they don't have a psychic power that's nearly strong enough to make them be able to hold their own against the onslaught of firepower, and comparing them to a Dread Knight, they really just don't hold to what I want them to do. Now, the other build, which I'm going to talk about very, very briefly, was when I went with all the Terminators. And the issue with the Terminators was the same thing. No prisoners. I'm giving up way too many points for no prisoners to play this defensive style. I'm not able to actually push as well as I would have liked to. And it just, in the end, I kind of sat back and looked at it a bit and was like, wow, everything is really crumbling and falling apart quickly, and I'm losing a lot of board space and a lot of board presence. Also, I couldn't find a third good secondary. The teleport strike wasn't really strong enough. It was really way too easy for my opponents to hide damaged units or units that I can't hit as hard and mitigate my teleport strike. And once they start getting into the third turn where I fail to do so, now I start running away with how much am I actually going to score on this? Am I going to get 10 points? Am I going to get 5? Or am I going to get 0? So the teleport strike was becoming really, really rough based on the firepower that I had. As I started to send units out there to try to engage and score that, Lane was able to easily pick up some of those units that I put out there, which meant that although I had put a strong forward threat into these things to score teleport strike, they were cleaned up and answered quickly. So now late into the game, I start running out of resources to be able to score teleport strike because of what the requirement, the gate, the shunt, and the deep strike. I can't deep strike past turn 3 because everything's on the table. The gate is 1 unit. Shunt is maybe another unit, but that's 2 command points on turns 4 and 5 that I have to have saved for that to be able to jump over there. So not being able to score on 1, 2, or 3 was really, really a tough call for trying to make that happen. So, infantry, that's the way I want to play Grey Knights. I want bulks of Terminators on the table. I want bulks of Strike. I want to put Silver Tide on the table. Unfortunately, this is not the edition for it. Now, there are some players out there that might disagree, might say, oh, well, if you do this, or if you do that. I don't like that, how easy it is to give up those kill secondaries into some matchups. And I don't think that we're going to be able to continue with an infantry base in 9th edition. With that being said, I did tell Lane I'm going to bring vehicles. I just said I wasn't bringing dreadnoughts. So tonight, versus Lane in our grand finale, here is my Brotherhood. Sorry for the dogs barking. All right, so this is my Brotherhood. Now I want to spend a little more time talking about the actual models that I'm taking today, because that's a lot of the reasons I put together this list. For some of the models that I own in my collection that I wanted to just have some good times with. I had Terminators out here. Terminators have a huge soft spot in my heart. I've had those guys for quite a bit of time. Not the oldest Grey Knight in my collection by any means, because they're newer models, ish. Newer models for Grey Knights, I'll put it that way. And but I did a lot of work. The bases are all custom painted and made. It like they're hand painted bases. All the bases for my army, under like my Interceptors and Drago, are all stuff that I hand painted. And I thought, to me, they were one of my best looking models. Like one time where I was like, oh wow, I can actually paint these things. And I had a friend that coached me through. So this army has been a lot of stages in my life as far as 40K, and in my real life too. When me and my wife were planning our wedding, I kind of needed to decide what hobbies I would keep and what hobbies needed to go away for our family and for our future. And when it came down to it, I wanted to keep Warhammer, but I was rather poor. So this army has been an amalgamation of a lot of Space Marine models that I was able to get over time, and some stuff I was able to pick up and convert and restore, and spent a lot of work on this so I could at least have one army to hang out with, play with my friends, and travel around and do some smaller events at the time. So tonight's Grey Knights are a Sword Bearers detachment, and I will be using all 3 of the abilities that the Sword Bearers give us. First, we got Mark for Death, which is a stratagem for 2 command points. Use the stratagem in the shooting phase and select 1 enemy unit within 12 inches of a Sword Bearer's Psyker unit from your army until the end of the phase. Each time a friendly Sword Bearer's unit makes an attack, makes a ranged attack against the enemy unit, add 1 to the attack's hit roll. So what does this mean? This means that when we get into turns 2, 3, and later on, and I get a little bit closer, I can spend 2 command points on a big juicy target and give everyone +1 to hit against it. More or less, this is something that if somebody's in dense cover, I can get rid of the dense cover for me, or the effect for me, but with my dreads that we'll talk about a bit, because my dreads are venerable, so they are hitting on 2s. And the Tech Marine will be buffing my big chunky boy. So there's lots of little tech in there. Now that's a strat I may not actually use against Lane, because with some of his units, and they won't necessarily negate my hits. They're not going to make me -1 to hit in a lot of ways. So I might not see that played. But it is at least something that's in the back of my mind that, hey, I have this here, and it's something that my army can utilize. Moving down, we have the Psychic Power, which is Empiric Lodestone. This is a malediction that is Warp Charge 7, 18-inch range, and I cast it on a enemy unit. It says, select 1 enemy unit with an 18 until the start of your next psychic phase. Each time a friendly vehicle, Sword Bearer's vehicle, unit makes a ranged attack, add 1 to the attack's wound roll. A unit can only be selected for the Psychic Power once per phase. So, no, not able to stack it, which, that's how a lot of things are. But at this time when the book was released, they probably thought people might try to stack it multiple times. Because if you go into a different tide, you actually could cast this more than once during each one of your turns, or each psychic phases. So what this does just gives me +1 to wound. A lot of stuff in many armies is -1 to wound. There are stuff that my las cannons are not going to be able to get 2s to wound against, and this gives me the ability to get past that and get 2s to wound on things and be able to possibly push through that heavier damage. Also gets around some of lanes and Death Guard and Votann and the -1, or I'm sorry, the not being able to re-roll to wound rolls. Okay, well, let's just make my to wound roll a little bit better and we'll have a good day. And lastly, we have Rites of Protection, which is a Warlord trait. This is a psychic action, which will be performed by my Tech Priest. And when this action is complete, with a Warp Charge value 5, I select a friendly Sword Bearer's vehicle within 12, and that vehicle gets a 4-up invulnerable save. Now I'm looking at you, Mr. Land Raider. So, with that being said, let's get over to all these units, because I've talked about them a lot. So let's talk about what's in the army and what I'm trying to do with this today. So, again, Sword Bearer's attachment, the Warlord is going to be my Librarian. He is a standard Librarian that I've run in the past for the damage. He's got the Psychic Epitome, he has the Vortex of Doom, and he also has Purifying Flame. He's the damage dealer. His Warlord trait is the Psychic Epitome. So, yeah, that's mostly him. Moving on to Drago. Drago has no Warlord trait. Nothing special. He's Drago. He's going to throw up rerolls on a core unit, and then he has the aura for rerolling ones in general. Drago is going to have Gate of Infinity, Sanctuary, and Warp Shaping in case I need to change the tide, but mostly it's just going to be him casting Gate, Sanctuary, and just being a beatstick. He'll probably be able to travel with some of the infantry a little more and play that game late, but he's going to be able to give a Dread Knight full rerolls or the infantry, mostly the Dread Knights, or Dreadnoughts. Haha, no Dread Knights here. And next to my HQs, because the Tech Priest is also an HQ, is my Brotherhood Champion, who is going to be played by the Castellan Crow today, because I spent a lot of time with this model and painted him up, and I really like him, but I don't necessarily need Crow in this list. What I need is a Brotherhood Champion. He is going to be able to deep strike behind the Librarian and cast Gate of Infinity to get his butt out of a bad situation and pull him back around the corner and then be there in the front line. He does have the Warlord trait Unyielding Anvil, so wherever he lands, he will have an aura of objective secured, and also that'll allow me to spend the command point to give a unit that's not near him the objective secured effect, such as my Interceptors. Last but certainly not least is my Tech Marine. All right, so this Tech Marine is itty-bitty. There's a little bit of a story behind it. So I did go to a tournament, and I was running Dread Knights, and this was a major tournament, and unfortunately, my Tech Marine has, well, shown up missing, but that's the problem. He didn't show up. I set my army out on the table. I had a Primaris Tech Marine that was painted up nice for my Grey Knights, and yeah, he came back and he was gone. So I had to run the I just ran the tournament down. I asked around, no one found him, so I just have not been able to replace him yet. So instead, I'm going back in time with a little bit of a conversion back when I was poor and I did need a Tech Marine with this nice little converted guy. So he's going to be giving a +1 to hit to a vehicle, most likely the Land Raider. He also has that Warlord trait, Psychic Action, to give a 4-up invuln, Land Raider. And then he could potentially heal vehicles for D3 wounds. Probably the Land Raider. All in all, he'll be a good utility in this list. He's also a cheap psyker, so he can do things like Purifying Ritual late into the game when the vehicles have moved on to other things. And he'll also have Gate of Infinity himself, so if we get pushed back and I need him to just teleport and get to somewhere else, he can do that. A lot of the theory with this list is based around just Gate of Infinity, Gate of Infinity, Gate of Infinity. Now we'll move over to my Dreads. So we got 3 venerable Dreadnoughts in this list. 2 of which are Las Cannon and a close combat weapon. The one that's white is my Grandmaster Mordak Dreadnought. If anyone knows about him and his ghosts, Mordak's Ghost Knights and that stuff, that's where I'm going with this. This is what happened to Mordak. He died and he's now in a Dreadnought. So we're still in the process with him. My other 2 Dreadnoughts are old. One of them is a metal chunky boy, and he has las cannon and missile launcher. And then the other 2, again, just have las cannon and close combat weapon. They're venerable, so they have the Feel No Pain. They have Armored Resilience, so they can cast that and buff their armor to go +1 save. And they hit on 2s, weapon skill and ballistic skill. So I'll give these guys a try and see how this works out. Hopefully they have the range to maybe stay back and be bulky enough. Lane's got a lot of shooting a lot of just volume shooting. So, you throw enough dice, I'm going to fail saves. Now on to the interceptors. We'll go to the interceptors. So we got 30 interceptors. What's to say about these guys? They can teleport across the field. I'm going to break them up into smaller squads. So there is purifying ritual points, or I'm sorry, Abhor the Witch points there. I may keep one squad as a 10-man and put it inside of the Land Raider. I haven't decided yet. But for the most part, these guys are going to be the ones that are going to be going around casting Purifying Ritual and trying to take objectives and all around trying to get me into a point to possibly win the game, considering I am taking a Land Raider. Last but not last in this column of infantry, we have 10 Strike. Strike will also be, well, it's 2 5-mans, excuse me. 2 5-man Strike. These guys will probably be in Deep Strike. They're just part of Mission Win. They all have swords. Deep Strike, Purifying Ritual, take objectives, objectives secured. That's basically their role for this. Having 5 Marine bodies to be able to do that can Deep Strike wherever I feel like I need them. All right, I've said it a couple times. Here we go. Land Raider. Now, when we're talking about units that have been with me a while, the ones that I just talked about with my Strike, these are all Space Marines that I've converted. I got other kits, chopped them apart. So all of my Space Marines, my interceptors, the beginning guys, are basic Space Marine models, the firstborns that we've known to call them. Over to the Land Raider. This was one that someone had started to turn into a battle wagon, and I rescued it from the orcs and resurrected it back to life. The whole top half had been chewed apart and torn, so I had to modify it. I made a little covering for the top. I was able to get another set of Land Raider treads to go all the way around it, so I give it that old school effect. And yeah, mounted a heavy bolter onto the back of it that's like kind of automated. And over time, might add some more bits to this thing, paint some stuff up and add it up. This is a very old model in my collection and one that doesn't get a lot of play. I mean, as we know, Land Raiders haven't really seen a lot of play, and there's a good reason for it. And we'll probably see that tonight. Hopefully not. A miracle could occur. But Land Raiders are tough. Land Raiders are, they take up a lot of space. They don't hide very easily. They're not as resilient as you'd hope they were. So it's going to be rough, especially considering it's going against a Hekaton. And that's kind of why I brought it. You got the big Hekaton. Let's take a big Land Raider. Let's see what this can do. This Land Raider is equipped with 2 twin-linked las cannons, a heavy bolter, and a multi-melta. So he's just going to be slinging shots across the field. For this list, I plan on taking definitely Purifying Ritual. I will not be doing Teleport Strike with this. I will be doing Banners. And the last one is still to be determined. I haven't fully committed to where I want to do my last secondary. I'm going to decide that in the game. I know Teleport Strike is not going to be a good option. I don't have the damage to put out with this. So I'm kind of stuck more to, do I attempt behind enemy lines with my interceptors? Do I go after grind them down and try to maybe just take all my squads as 10-man purifiers and wait till later and destroy things? I haven't fully committed over there yet on what that last secondary is going to be, but I do know I'm going to be doing Purifying Ritual and raising the banners and work from that point. Well, guys, that's my list. A lot of nostalgia with some of those models there that I'm bringing on the table in potentially the last matchup for the Grey Knights for 9th edition. 10th edition, we'll see what we have. Psychic phase is changing up. We don't have a psychic phase anymore. It's going to be during the turn. So that's going to change a lot of how psychic powers work. And maybe we'll get to use powers more frequently since they're directly on characters. Someone who takes Gate of Infinity, we might get to use it twice. I doubt it, considering powers like that are really, really boosted. But there might be some other abilities that we get to see multiple times out there and use, and just all in all make it a lot easier to play this off of a data sheet. Guys, hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you over at the Battle Report. Thanks for watching.